Good morning, guys. Hope you guys are well. How is everyone doing today? Just getting a few things ready. Nothing special today. We're not gonna do anything too strict today. Just gonna have a little fun, go through some different design elements, try to play around with some filters, check out what's some of the new things. Is there anything that you guys, because I'm wanting to really just go through the filters sort of today and kind of play around with those. Is there sort of a filter stack that you're not quite familiar of how to achieve a certain look, like a beach or certain canyon effects, things a lot better? I like Roll Critter 2 filtering UI a lot better. Yeah, so real quick, one thing that I wanted to do, well, of course, if you click here in the search bar, you can probably type in, yeah, erosion. You can type in what you want that to look like. Of course, there is some weird, it already did some stuff prior to us committing to it. I'm hoping that once you click add a filter, maybe all the filters, I like how they're still in their categories. So general, design, effect. But instead of it being in a list, I think that the idea is still they're going to have it either a pop-out box, or B, once you click add filters, there will be all the filters, broken down into their categories under this box here. So if I were to add a filter, there'll be a general section right here. There'll be a design section underneath, and you can see all of these listed together in text form or a box form, like in World Critter 2. Yeah, I'm awaiting a tutorial on using the biomes, as it does get a little confusing layering them over each other and trying to figure out what's affecting what. Yeah, so we'll definitely, I think we're going to talk about biomes on Wednesday on how that works. But yeah, it can get confusing, but think of it like a tree structure. You have the roots that start into the trunk, and the trunk into the branches, and the branches into the twigs. So it's kind of like a parent structure. You start with one biome and you can filter out another biome. We'll cover that on Wednesday more in depth, but there is a biome button here, this little icon here that looks just like the biome icon up here. So this right here will let you filter what each biome is affecting. So if I were to add another biome or add two biomes and have see here. So I've got the parent biome, and then I've got each of these biomes. So if I select this biome, I know the area that I'm working in. I select this biome, I know the area that I'm working in. That's all based off this little icon down here that just hides and unhides the filter stack. Then you select the parent biome and you can see both of the two child biomes. So we're definitely going to cover that more in depth on Wednesday. Yeah. And another thing to keep in mind is what we've striving for them to do now is, especially whenever we add filters, let's just add a few of them real quick, just so that we can talk about some stuff. So let's just do Sedimentation Complex, and perhaps erosion flow. We'll do this. Really lower this. And let's add just one more just for fun. Why not? Why not swirl? It doesn't matter. Okay, so this is actually just one thing I wanted to cover today anyway, was how you understand the filter stack, basically. So it's essentially, think of this just like Photoshop. So before in World Creator 2 and in previous versions of this version, the filter that was applied last will appear here at the bottom. So it goes in order from 1, 2, 3, 4 of how filters are going to appear hierarchical on a hierarchy on your terrain. Now it's the other way around. So canyon is 1, erosion flow is 2, 3, and 4. So the last filter that you applied, which will be assumingly the filter that's applied on top of the other filters, will visually be on top of the other filters in this list. So it's just like Photoshop. Assume that the canyon filter here is on the bottom and the swirl here is on the top. So the top filter is what's going to be affecting the terrain last. And you can move these things around to have some different effects on how the hierarchy is going to be applied. So realistically, I would probably want swirl to be at the bottom. And the reason why I would want swirl at the bottom is because that's generating the shape, the overall mass shape. And then what I would want is to apply the canyon filter to add the detail to that. So let's reduce. Let's see. I don't want too much of this to be affecting everything. All right, so how much do we want it to swirl is based on this strength slider. Let's have it swirl just a little bit. We can change its size. So let's lower its size a little bit. All right, so then the canyon filter would be applied next for adding the first round of detail. Okay, small question. Don't know if already answered somewhere. I checked out World Creator 2 a while ago, but ended up using World Machine. Say I want to switch to World Creator 2021 after already having my base map from World Machine. Can we import tiled height maps in World Creator 2021 yet? You cannot import tiled maps yet. It is going to happen. There is going to be the tiled feature where you have this tile, this left tile, bottom tile, right tile, and top tile. You can keep adding tiles just like world composition in Unreal Engine 4. And you can apply a height map individually to each one of those at some point. I'm hoping that that's something that comes out by the beta. And the beta, I'm hoping, is coming out sometime by the end of the summer or beginning of the fall. The beta is coming out this year, hopefully by Q3 of this year. I'm hoping, but I have no idea what the scheduling on that is. And the goal, from what I've heard, is that the tiled part of this program will be, hopefully, I say that in quotations, available on during the beta. Until then, you can import a height map. Like if you had a map from World Machine and you exported the entire terrain as a single height map, you can import that here. But again, the limitation of this program and its current state is 2K by 2K in physical terrain size. So you may have a terrain that's much larger, and I understand that. All right. Next thing, I am working on the design of a nature area to filter salt water naturally in the sea in the Netherlands. So I would love to see some beach areas with dark water. Yes, we're definitely, we'll try to do a whole beach day. Maybe next, won't be next Monday. Next Monday is Memorial Day. So say one of the first Mondays in June, one of the first weeks in June. Yeah, I'll try to have a stream dedicated to just beaches, because there are some beachfronts in the States on the Eastern Coast that have a lot of freshwater to saltwater interactions, and all of that is really cool how it plays. So yeah, we'll try to do some of that. There isn't the unfortunate, or here in general, I really want the smooth filter to be in here, and the smooth filter is not in here yet. And that was one of my favorite filters for creating good underwater terrains. So hopefully I'll work up a pipeline for the current state on designing some beaches. Let's see. All right. Thanks for answering. I'll check World Creator again. Still, the little I see from World Creator 2020, it's very neat and looking pretty darn promising. Yeah, it is pretty darn promising. Is the seamless X and Y function from World Creator 2 still in World Creator 2021? I couldn't seem to locate the option. the seamless X and Y, it will be. I mean, here in the global settings here, based on whenever decide what the scale of it is, there will be some options here for making it seamless. That's not a setting just yet, and it doesn't look like it is. But I mean, I guess in the time being, if you want it to be super seamless and still work on it, just add at the last result, add the zero edge filter. Let's see how well we can do this. Yeah, it's really weird, but if you add the zero edge filter and crank up all the settings, depending on how you design the terrain here, you can make it seamless across the board. But I would just wait until the seamless X and Y comes into play. The name should be 2022. Oh, World Creator 2021 should be 2022. I see what you mean. Speaking of smooth, besides classic blur, medium filter can create interesting shapes. The classic blur medium, yeah, that's a good thought. The median, doing that like Photoshop, yeah. Being able to blur between two different zones or two different areas based off of that. And is that in part of this blur already? No, that's not part of that blur. We don't have a median blur, do we? Or did I miss that, Zen? Okay, you don't think it exists yet. Yeah, it'd be really great if between biomes, perhaps that'd be nice if there were some filter distribution rules or effects rules that affect the boundaries to both of, like, say, the swirl and the canyon filter, being able to affect the boundary between these two or between the biomes. You could probably do that with if you do, I want to say you do an edge detect, or that'd be kind of weird. There's probably a way that we could do that with blurring the edge of the biome itself, like the effects of the biome itself. And I think that's going to be a thing. I'm sure it will be. There has to be some sort of noise differentiation between the two biomes. Okay, I see what you're saying. So try it in Photoshop. It's definitely something that could be added easily. Large values, yeah, definitely, for sure. I think some of the general tools from Photoshop being piloted over here would be really handy. I mean, they've kind of got to start. Some of these edit modes are really nice. In the custom base shape tool here are from the idea from Photoshop. So that's at least a positive outcome. It is similar to river erosion from Geoglyph. Oh, okay, I see. Very similar pipeline there. That makes sense. All right. So as an example to continue, let's see, how do we want to take this? Let's make this turn into sort of, let's do actually, do we have, where is that effect? I don't think that effect is in here yet, which is unfortunate. I'm looking for the canyon with the what's the filter? The rough canyon filter from World Creator 2 would have been really nice in here instead of duplicating this. All right, we'll just crank up. Let's see, let's crank all of these down and make sure these two are popped up so that we can get some nice sort of rock features. And let's lower the sky strength a tad. All right, that's fine for now. Yeah, let's try to move this around, see which plays nice. Sometimes duplicating filters is the way to go, at least right now. Um, let's see. I don't want ridge to affect the entire piece. So let's just go to add a distribution rule. Let's try cavity here. And then let's say convex so that we can get the top bits. I really want there to be able to see on the terrain what I'm actually doing, which isn't a thing yet. But it will be. So step size, let's make it really tiny. All right, I think that's fine. All right, so let's add another one. Let's see. Let's just run through the list. This is why the previewing is really handy. I actually initially thought of making, let's do a cutoff here. I love the cutoff value because we can control where it's being cut off at. You're just basically creating a lower boundary and a higher boundary. So with the cutoff, which I think is relatively new, we've established a height cut here. So you can see it's lowering the terrain, or I can raise the bottom part whenever it comes up. So we are raising quite small the bottom portion of the terrain here. Let's make the cutoff real subtle like that. And maybe change it to 50%. I have nothing planned for what I'm trying to achieve here other than, I see. So if we change the general strength, you can see it moving right there. And it's not exactly trying to create a subtle plateau effect. Let's see, a button to turn off and on lighting would be nice. I think we have that. Well, so this button right here turns on and off sort of all of the influence of the atmosphere and basically the atmosphere and any sort of lighting effects aside from just making the visuals of the terrain monochromatic. So you can see the sun is just a dot. Turn this on, it turns off all of the atmospheric sort of effects, which affect greatly what's doing it. Now, I do know that if you're talking about like a look dev mode where you can see no lighting, you're just wanting to see sort of like the mass itself in sort of like a look dev mode, like in 3D applications, that is going to be a thing. I have no word on exactly when that's going to be there. Shadows, I don't. So we can turn off the bloom. We can turn off the atmosphere. We can turn on and off the clouds, on and off the water. See the biome. Shadows, we cannot turn off yet. I know exactly what you're after. There is no turning off shadow option, which is really unfortunate right now. But you can, I believe, if I take the angle straight up, we can sort of eliminate shadows like this by taking the horizontal sun angle so it's straight vertical. Oh no, that didn't work. What sun angle did we do? Well, that's straight vertical. My bad. I didn't mean horizontal. We can kind of tailor this to what we want to hide some of the shadows, but still it's way too bright for what we're after. That makes sense. No chance. No chance at working. All right, yeah. I'll reiterate that to them. Make sure they don't forget to turn off turn off shadows or just have a button somewhere over here for a look dev mode. I think that's what everybody wants. Maybe an option to store some presets. Yes, there is going to be there's going to be presets being able to store it across the board in multiple ways. One of which is probably going to be the most popular is a preset for the filters. Like if you have a certain biome that you've created a filter stack for, there's going to be a preset for that. Or you can create your own presets. If you've created a nice desert area and you really wanted that to be copied on multiple projects, you've created a preset for it and you just use it. And I believe there's going to be some different presets for lighting styles too. So in the lighting category here, there will be some overall presets to adjust everything here, which I'm hoping that includes turning on or off the shadows as well. So there'll be some different lighting presets to different, environments. A morning preset, an afternoon preset, a high noon, evening, nighttime, those sort of things. Oh, you meant for view and render lighting? Yeah, having some presets or just like I believe the idea is to have a thing where you can have a preset for design and then have a preset like I've talked about in World Creator 2 for just using it only for capturing visuals within this particular program. Because sometimes you don't want clouds and those crazy atmospheric fog effects and stuff to hinder what you're working on at first. That's more of the after shot. So definitely, quick presets to kind of get that done. I'd love to see some sculpting tools to build up the generated terrain in certain places, like a clay build up and inflate tool from ZBrush. So you would just be raising the base shape and the filter textures would recalculate on top, or a marquee lasso selection for push-pull functions. That's actually a good idea. I love the idea of a marquee tool or a lasso tool for sure. This is one thing that I was going to touch on probably in the biome section, but it makes more sense to do that here probably too. So if I add a second biome and click add, go to custom base shape, create, and flatten. Let's say, where is the inherit filters? There we go. All right, so I've got two different biomes here. So the first biome is the one with all the crazy shapes here. The second biome is just blank. I have removed the custom base shape, so there's nothing on this terrain that's being applied for the second biome. And I've ensured that it is fully it's fully adhering to what the parent biome, or the global biome in this case. So I've inherited the filters from the previous biome. So you can see it's turning that off and on. I've made sure that the operation, instead of overwrite, because you see if I click on overwrite, the custom base shape that I have flattened is going to remove everything that we did from the first biome. So the operation must be set to add so that we can add additionally to this. So then we go to the custom base shape tool, pump up some of our subdivisions. So say if I wanted to add to the global biome, well, I can just simply add to it. So if I want this piece here to sort of raise up, I can raise it up. Of course, the filters are having an effect on this too. So anything that I do is going to be affected from the first biome. Whoops, I messed up there. And the reason why some of these areas are being affected that way, that's the swirl filter for you. The swirl filter does some really weird, stretchy things. So this is just an example of me being able to affect what's being adjusted. Now, I know it'd be nice if I could just, I could paint in change brush sizes, and then come through, do smaller details. This is what I'm going to talk about more in the biome video, but yeah, and then we can play around with how this affects the terrain. So that's what the whole idea of the second biome is for. You don't even have to have it. Go back to the original. So it's a non-destructive way to edit the terrain based off of the first biome. Back to the cutoff filter. What happens when you lower 11 and 12? Well, let's check it out. That's what we're here for, trial and error. So I've turned off that second biome for now. So all we see is the global biome. So I'm going to take 12, lower 12, lower 11. Let's try. Let's see exactly at what stage. You can see I'm going to explain what it's doing here in just a second, but I want you to see the effect. So let's look up here at the top where the actual cutoff is taking place. If I lower 9, 8, 7, 6. So let's turn this back on a little bit. So what is happening is each one of these levels is obviously being based off of a different resolution or precision for the terrain as a whole. So right now, the physical terrain is 2K by 2K, which I believe the first level step is affecting the terrain across the board. What was it? 64 by 64 pixels. I think this one might be, no. This is 8 by 8. So, no, 4 by 4. So level step 1 is affecting 4 pixels by 4 pixels. Level step 2 is affecting 8 pixels by 8 pixels. 3 is 16 by 16. 4 is 32 by 32. So on and so forth. So the more pixels, the higher the level step, the more resolution is being affected. And each of these details, like all of these rocks, are on a different resolution. So for example, let's turn off cutoff here. And let's see. All right, so this canyon here, if I were to lower 12, you see some of those little tiny rocks went away. If I were to lower 11, more of those little tiny effects are going away. 10, 9, you see the detail that canyon is having is affecting different levels, so to speak. So let's put, if I crank, I put all of these down at 0 and crank 12 all the way, 11 and 10 all the way. You see those little rock details are coming back more minutely. But if I were to say only rise up a level step 4, it's not going to be that much because level step 4 is wanting to affect the terrain as a whole. That makes sense. The uppercut is too high. Yeah, no, I agree. The level of the uppercut here is too high. And the lower cut, I think a lot of it has to do with the strength. So if I crank the strength all the way up, it adjusts where the cutoff is. I think this one needs a little bit more work because the bottom level here isn't working exactly how it should. If I were to crank. See, it's not exactly working how I pictured it to be. Yeah, so the uppercut has some work to be done, that's for sure. It is cool that you can cut it off, but yeah, it's got some weird effects there. Definitely need an option to split effects into groups. So certain filters would not level step cross process, but instead group A would be processed and result would be used as a starting point for group B, and so on and so forth. Of course, there will be calculation penalty. Yeah, having some, I think having a sort of biome system for the filters would be great in and of itself too. So instead of, this is one thing that Photoshop does well, this is one thing that Quixel Mixer does well too, is being able to group filter stacks and only have it affect that group instead of it affecting the whole string. That's a really good idea, and I think it's going to be something that we have to pass along for sure to the other guys. Cause yeah, if I wanted to group these two together and have their sort of level steps be affected by a single level step string and not affect another group, that would be fantastic too. I think some more adjustments like that are definitely in play here. So let's try to change the cutoff based on slope. Sorry, not based off slope. Based off, actually, no, let's do it based off slope. See what we can get. We can see we can get some really strange things. So let's make the top value 90. And let's lower the bottom slope. So let's go up to around 88 and lower itself. You can see that effect that's taking place here is pretty interesting. It's almost alien-esque. If I were to go the bottom route and affect this direction, has some really interesting stuff. So let me take this top value of 30 degrees and smooth that out by this slider here. If I smooth that out too much, it'll do that. It's a really interesting pipeline. So let's do that. And then let's go ahead and affect this slope. Let's just blur it a tad. So blur strength, you can see if I blur it too much, does this. If I blur it too little. So this is I don't know about that. Let's change to, you can also do a clamp value, but that's not, let's try directional blur. So blur strength in a single direction. Aha, this is what I want. So let's make this blur go this way. This is one cool way to make some striations, which I inadvertently did here, not intentionally trying to do that. Because let's go ahead and add, where's the drift? I meant wind. All right, so wind. Not that direction. Which direction is it here? So if I turn this, it's really affecting. There we go. All right. So the length for wind filter is really going to make a big impact. Let's go that route. It's kind of some interesting sort of effects here. So where was that? That was directional blur there. There are some really interesting effects that you can get with the effects rack. And I plan to also have a stream that goes through each and every one of these and what they do. Same thing for distribution. I'll have a stream dedicated to going through each and every one of these and what they do. Today was supposed to be just a laid back version of that approach, but go through these filters. Definitely don't want to distort. So crater is interesting. Let's see. Canyon again. We could do some more canyons, hills, mountains. I have an effect that I want to do here in just a second. Ridged again. Oh, that's interesting pipeline. I don't like terrace too much right now. It has some work it definitely needs. Do erosion fluvial. It definitely has some areas to work on. All right. Actually go to punchline is going to be this guy right here. So make that guy next. Let's lower the strength just all the way and see what we can come up with. About right there. Fluvial. Lower this strength and crank it up a tab. Perhaps erosion. Yep, I just I saw that comment a little too late. We're definitely doing some erosion now, but I wanted to, let's see. So let's add sediment complex after erosion. So this filter is quite staggering. So with sediment complex, the thing you got to remember here is the length. The length of sedimentation is going to make a big difference, a huge difference on how it's sort of affecting the terrain as a whole. The more, basically, it's calculating sort of the amount of stretch that sedimentation is going to collect. So look at it almost like length as amount. Instead of length, it should just be amount of sedimentation. So when I increase the length or increase the amount of sedimentation, it's going to add way more sedimentation buildup. You can see here. Or if I decrease the sedimentation length or amount, you can see that it is coming down to nothing. Sometimes you don't want the sedimentation to remove some of these details, which is why, one, we can make sure the length is around 2 to 3. And that helps build up some of these micro areas, which if I go to 0.5 meter, that would help, or 1/4 meter in precision, that would help us see this a little bit easier. You can see as I increase this a little bit more, some of that sedimentation is filling in here in these cracks. You may or may not want that. You can see it's really smooth over here. If I were to lower this back down. So you don't want to remove some of those details. So what you can do is you can have the length set up to somewhere around 10. Okay. And then we can also, adjust the level steps so that it has more of a straight curve if you want. And by straight curve, I meant just a straight linear sort of approach here. That would help some, but another thing to do is change the sediment complex's distribution. So the length is obviously going to affect the entire terrain, but say we want the sediment to only, we only want it to affect the cratered or concave areas. So naturally, add a distribution, cavity. This one is set to concave already. We unfortunately can't see what it's being affected by, but we crank this to 100, that'll completely fill in the sort of area that we had originally, and we can adjust the step size a little bit. If we wanted to go crazy, go convex. Convex is only going to, affect the convex areas up here. So go back to concave. You see it's removed the sedimentation from up here and applied it more here in this concave area. If I were to increase the length a lot, you can see how it's keeping the concave sort of setting here is keeping some of this detail while applying the sedimentation filter here in the bottom. All right, so let's go through. We are hitting we're a little over an hour now, but we'll go a little bit longer. So is there any other, let's see. Let's just see what each one of these looks like again at this point. We're going to go through some of the, fill is a new one where it literally just fills in. This is another quite handy filter that it literally just fills in all of the nooks and crannies with sedimentation. If I were to lower its length, it's a different type of sedimentation, but it is more of what you would naturally think of as you just drop sand straight onto the terrain, and that's how it comes out. Let's see. I don't want to break crater cliffs is too much. I really love these striation pieces here. And that's an effect I was going to talk about in a whole new video, is how to get a certain look to certain different types of mountain striations where you see there's angled striations and vertical ones and horizontal ones. in mountains or cliff sides, particularly in certain regions of the world. I think even Iceland had some of that stuff, which is pretty nifty. Let's keep it there. Smooth ridges. Oh, that's really weird. Let's do balloon, but I'm actually going to change the direction of the balloon to be a negative value. And we want this to be somewhere around here. All right, now let's take the strength to 0 and crank. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the balloon filter, which obviously balloons things out, and I'm reversing that order so it balloons downward. So I create some more concave elements. And then the length, obviously, like we've discussed before, changes that sort of amount. But we can change the balloon. See, here is way too much strength. So I'm going to just affect it. This is a very subtle effect. Very, very, very subtle. All right, so this is not quite the landscape that I had imagined in my mind, but it definitely gets some really interesting effects. How about, so we've got a lot here. Let's see, for erosion fluvial, or erosion flow. Let's make erosion flow. Okay, this is a good distribution. Let's base it off of slope as well. But I want it to go up to about 60 degrees. Well, let's go down to 50 degrees and then feather it up to 60, which is adding 10 there, so that we can, instead of it really cutting out too much of the top value here. Let's see what happens. We crank that up. Maybe we can go up to 60 after all. It helps feather up that top so it looks more natural at the top end of the ridge. You guys seen, I can't think of a good location in the world right off the top of my head. Have you guys seen these sort of horizontal stripes before in landscapes? I know of a couple areas, especially in, there's a couple areas in a lot of continents that have that actually. Sort of straight line cuts. All right, so I think that was all the filters that there was a lot of filters here that we ran through. Actually, let's add mountains just real quick because I want those striations to be a little bit more rocky. Right now, these striations have a really harsh sort of cut. You can see these really pristine cuts to a degree. If I add mountains, it makes the side of these cuts, the straightness of these cuts are still there. But the mountain filter, what it does is it takes into account a lot of the sort of sloped nature that you've established in areas. And on this slope, it's going to create, you can see, pardon me. You can see here, it's created this sort of rocky texture on the outside of the hill face. And this is quite nice, especially whenever you're doing something like this, these striations, and you're wanting sedimentation, for example, to fill in these gaps like we've sort of got here, but the rock to kind of punch out to a degree. Let's see what this looks like underneath the erosion. All right, so if I put this above erosion flow or above erosion fluvial, the mountains are having that sort of effect. Let's put it under balloon. Let's see, is balloon having that much? It is having more of an effect. All right, so let's see how much sedimentation. I am just going through seeing what sort of, I may have to adjust my cavity step size here a little bit. Yeah, there we go. I still want some of that bottom area to be relatively smooth. All right. So we've gone through quite a few filters to get an interesting effect. So let's backtrack here. Let's take a look at what this looks like without the swirl. So the swirl here, as we've mentioned, is creating a quite staggering, let's delete this biome, is creating a quite staggering sort of global sized uh, design. So the swirl is the mass design, and everything behind the swirl is going to be this smaller design. So if we hide the swirl, you can see, well, this is the generic terrain that you start with, but you can see how quite interesting these these rock striations are, and I actually quite like them. I feel a little bit better in this sort of application in the standard starting level for World Creator. So if I add that swirl back, see, it's just a striking difference. Let's take off swirl, go down here, and let's add something else that changes design. Ooh, Voronoi is quite staggering. So let's move Voronoi down to the bottom, and let's change its strength, cell size. Make the cell size massive, cell height, lower the cell height. And let's see, subtract, let's say the center. That's an interesting effect. Let's do add, actually, let's do center, and let's trait smooth fall off, a sphere fall off, or a sharp fall off. Okay, so let's see, height from center. Aha, I gotcha. All right, so we're gonna do just regular add, and we're gonna do a smooth fall off, but let's change our distance scale, which still affects sort of that height variation. And cell height. And let's see what happens when you add swirl back to it. My problem with Voronoi right now is just how sharp these top edges are. But I'm going to do a sand dune sort of tutorial at one point, and I'll show you how to really tailor that Voronoi filter or custom sculpt some, which is my preferred method, is to custom sculpt sand dunes. And I'll show you sort of like a pattern that kind of works, because Voronoi is kind of a weird sort of way to do dunes, in my opinion, unless you add a lot of effects to it. And I think that can be tedious. So we'll do that. We'll affect that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Or create 3 tests. Let's do mine. We'll call this filter testing. So what I'm going to do is tomorrow, we're going to start off with some pipelines for texturing this terrain and different ways we can go about doing it, and adding water, how to add textures for sedimentation, how to add textures for rock, how to add highlights, how to add texture based off of sort of life, if that makes sense, like vegetation in wet areas, and we can pipeline wet areas in here, do some simulations. So this is by far not the terrain that I had in my mind when I was going to start this stream today, but that's the fun of it. We just played around with an insane filter stack. We could have gone through more distribution rules to get this, but I kind of wanted to save distributions and effects for a separate stream altogether that's really tailored for that. This was just supposed to be a fun day to create something crazy, but yeah, it worked out. It definitely worked out, and I love this sort of texture here. And when we texture it, it's going to turn out really cool. I love these chill sessions. Actually, hope you can do more of them. Yes, hopefully every single Monday we can do chill sessions where we can just play around and goof off like this, and every Wednesday will be more of a guided session. These chill sessions like today, I probably would go on for 2 or 3 hours. Actually, would be a good plan. So maybe the next time I do one of these on a Monday, that we can do that. Of course, everything's pending work schedules and whatnot, but that's the goal. It won't be next Monday because next Monday I'll be out of town for Memorial Day. But the following Monday, let's plan for another chill stream like this. Sound good, guys? If you have any further questions, let me know and I'll try to answer them before we cut the stream. This is being recorded right now, so I will be sure to have this for all Patreon users, hopefully by tomorrow, and it'll be on YouTube in the next week or so. Oh, and of course, whatever craziness I make here, I'll be sure to share with every one of you as a free resource on the Patreon page. Perfect. All righty. Thank you guys for joining. I will see y'all tomorrow. Hope y'all have a good one.